Good morning.
There's a sign-up sheet at the back.
We're going to get started. Welcome to the BioLaunch series seminar. This seminar this week, I'm very excited. It's going to be focused on NIH SBIRs. We have four great program officers and representatives from NIH that have come. Two are Georgia Tech alums, so that's always awesome, and it's great to see them. I'm Andres Garcia. I'm the director of IBB, and it's really great to host this event. I want to give a shout out to Harold Solomon, who's going to take over in a second, and Cindy Sondel, who are the commercialization folks in IBB and really structure the program and get the speakers lined up. And obviously, I want to thank the IBB staff. Randy's here, Coley, Christine, and Savannah for really putting the program together. So with that, thank you. I hope we have a great day. And Harold, take it away.
Thank you, Andres, and welcome everybody. And thank you to our out-of-town guests. So you see the names up here. Stephanie, raise your hand. Okay, and Stephanie's with Heart, Lung, and Blood. Each of these folks has a domain that they play in for one of the institutes. And what I would like, and Saroj, yep, over there, and Josh, and Stacie, I gotta do this. Josh and Stacie are alums. So we have clout at the NIH, a lot of it. And it gets better. Stacie was at the FDA. Anybody who goes through a clinical trial could have crossed her desk. And there are many other alums within the FDA as well. So it's really great to have you back on campus. The idea for today is they're going to present what they do. The takeaway that I'd really like you to focus on getting when you leave the room, a lunch outside and networking, of course, but these are programs that give you non-dilutive funding. So these grants can go into your startup company based on your research. And people complain, oh, these grants, they only fund 15% of the proposals they see. Well, if you go try to raise venture capital and you raise money from 15% of the VCs you pitch, you're superhuman. You would make Steve Jobs blush. So this is very high expected return capital. And it comes from folks who've been educated in a similar way, who've seen the patterns. They can really help you, and the big takeaway is they want to talk to you way before you propose. They want to help you prepare. So with that, I'll turn it over to who's going to present first? Okay.
All right, thank you so much, Harold, and good morning, everyone. As you all have previously heard, oh, hold on, I'm going to switch microphones. Perfect. Oh, hold on. Can everyone hear me? Yes. Okay, great. So as it was previously mentioned, my name is Stephanie Davis. I am the Small Business Program Officer at the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute. And I work in our Innovation and Commercialization Office, which provides funding opportunities and training resources for academic and small business-based innovators alike. But before I go over the Heart, Lung, and Blood specific resources, I wanted to just start us off with a really brief small business program overview and what the NIH Small Business Program does to advance biomedical innovators. So for those of you in the audience who are not familiar with the Small Business Grant Program, it says 1.2, but it's actually now $1.3 billion dedicated to funding biomedical innovations that can help fulfill the mission of the National Institutes of Health, namely treating, preventing disease, and improving the quality of life for Americans. So these two programs are the ones that make up the Small Business Program. So the first one is called the Small Business Innovation Research, or SBIR program. This is the parent program for the Small Business Grant Program, and it is designed to provide funding for small business concerns who are engaging in R&D and developing technologies with the potential for commercialization. The sister program is called the Small Business Technology Transfer, or STTR program. The STTR program is very similar to the SBIR program, with a few key differences that will be discussed soon enough. The main one being that STTR grants are meant to facilitate collaborations between small business concerns and US-based nonprofit research institution. But the end goal is the same, developing technologies with the potential for commercialization. So a lot of people ask, what are the specific benefits of small business funding through the NIH? So Harold alluded to some of them, but I wanted to expound on a few more benefits to small business grants. So the NIH is the largest source of early stage capital for life sciences focused companies in the US. We are willing to fund technologies that are not typically going to be attractive to angel investors, venture capital firms, because they're risky. So our goal of the program is to provide funding that can help de-risk these technologies. So we, at the Small Business Program, will fund everything from the early stage proof of concept studies all the way up to the early stage scale up in manufacturing. So a little bit more advanced than your basic R01s and other research project grant mechanisms. But it is our goal that when companies are finished with small business grant funding, they will be able to have technologies that are attractive to strategic partners and venture capital firms. Additionally, so this is free money. When you get a grant, you don't have to pay it back. It is non-dilutive, so we do not take equity. And also, awardees who get small business grants can use this to help leverage funding to attract some of these investors and strategic partners. When you get a grant, you are going to be reviewed by experts in your field. So it does give you a bit of credibility that can be used to attract some of these other sources of funding. So I mentioned there are some differences between SBIR and STTR grants. They're more alike than they are different, and the award is always made to the small business concern. So it is the awardee institution in both cases. The key differences are that SBIR grants permit partnering, but they don't require it, while STTR grants require partnering with a nonprofit research institution. There are different work or subcontracting requirements for both of these mechanisms. For STTRs, there is always a requirement for at least 40% of the budget to go to the small business and 30% to go to the research institution. For SBIR grants, these differ based on whether or not it's a phase 1 or phase 2 grant, and I will get to the difference between those two in a minute. And then finally, for SBIRs, you always have to have the contact PI primarily employed with the small business at the time of the award. For STTRs, the PI may either be primarily employed with the research institution or the small business. So STTRs are a very attractive option for faculty members and other people who are employees of a university who don't want to give away their day job. So I mentioned that the small business grants come in phases, phase 1 and phase 2. So these are not the same as clinical trial phases. That is a common misconception, but rather they refer to technology readiness level. So phase 1 awards typically are just under $300,000 on average. This does differ between institutes and centers, and usually lasts between anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. These are mostly focused on early stage feasibility studies. Phase 2 awards usually last between 1 and 3 years, 2 on average, and their budgets hover around the $2 million mark. These are more focused on extensive R&D studies that sometimes venture into kind of manufacturing and scale up. There are some other options outside of the traditional phase 1 to phase 2 pathway. There is an option called a fast track mechanism. This is an option for both SBIR and STTR applicants. I call it the 2-for-1 special because you essentially are applying for 2 grants in one. And if you get a fast track award, you don't have to reapply for the phase 2. You can transition to the phase 2 if you meet your phase 1 grant milestones. And then if you're an SBIR applicant, there is an option to skip over the phase 1 via a direct to phase 2 mechanism. And this is an advantage to companies that have already done their feasibility studies using non-federal funds. There are some institutes and centers that have later stage funding opportunities, including something known as phase 2B grants and also Commercialization Readiness Pilot Awards. So my colleagues are going to talk about these options at their institutes, and I will be talking about NHLBI's participation in those. And finally, we don't have a phase 3. Some agencies do, where they act as the final buyer. So when we say a company's in phase 3, we essentially mean that it has progressed beyond the need for NIH support, and they're being supported by private investment. So a lot of people wonder, is your company eligible for a small business grant? There are some key requirements set by the Small Business Administration that all companies have to meet in order to get a small business grant. So you have to be organized as a for-profit, US-based business. You must be 500 or fewer employees, including affiliates. However, most of the grants that go to small businesses go to much smaller companies than that. And also, the work, by and large, must be done within the US. Sometimes there are rare case-by-case exemptions, but since the small business program is designed to promote R&D activity within the US, in most cases, the work must be done domestically. In addition, there are some ownership requirements. So this company must be at least 50% US owned and operated by US citizens or permanent residents. If your company is owned by another organization, that company must be greater than 50% owned and operated by US citizens or permanent residents. And then finally, this only applies to SBIR grantees. But if your company is more than 50% owned by multiple venture capital firms, hedge funds, or private equity firms, that is fine as long as one firm does not own a majority share. So most of the applications that NIH institutes get come in through some funding opportunities known as the omnibus solicitations. So these are very broad investigator-initiated funding opportunities where we're not looking for a particular technology type or indication. We are asking for you to submit your best proposals. And these follow some standard due dates, namely the next one's going to be September 5th, followed by due dates on January 5th and April 5th. And so the new omnibus notices of funding opportunity are going to be coming out very soon, probably within the next few weeks. Other institutes sometimes will have specific or targeted grant solicitations, and some institutes and centers participate in SBIR contract solicitations. So my colleagues are going to be talking about these in their presentations. And just as a note, if you are pursuing one of these targeted funding opportunities, read carefully because not all institutes participate in these, and sometimes they have special due dates, review panels, or budget requirements that don't apply to the omnibus. So one of the questions I get a lot is, what happens to my application after I submit it to the NIH? So I'm sure a lot of you in this room, I'd like to see a show of hands. How many of you have just any experience submitting an NIH grant? It doesn't have to be a small business grant. Okay, I see several hands. So the process for NIH small business grants is not all that different from what happens to an R01 after it's submitted. So as always, you're going to submit your grant to the NIH. Most of the time, we recommend using Assist, but some people like to use the grants.gov workspace. And it's going to be assigned by the Center for Scientific Review to a study section, which is going to be a panel of experts who are going to review your proposal. And it's also going to get assigned to an institute or center. Sometimes applications can get assigned to multiple institutes and centers, with one acting as the primary and one or two acting as the secondary. And when your proposal is going to get reviewed, after it's reviewed, you'll get your summary statement back, which has a compilation of all of the reviewer critiques, as well as your overall impact score. So when your impact score, if it is high enough to be considered for funding, it's going to go to the advisory council of the primary and secondary institutes that it was assigned to. And if it's approved for funding by council, it will end up getting put on the funding list. All of the applicants are going to be required to provide any additional documentation needed for the award via a process known as just in time, and then finally the notice of award goes out. But all in all, this process can take a while. It can take anywhere from, I'd say, 7 to 9 months, and that does not include if you have to resubmit. So always be sure to plan ahead. And
can I ask a question there?
Yes.
The scoring happens.
Yes.
Harold, use a mic. There's people on mic. Here. Oh, no.
Good catch. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you, Andres. Scoring happens.
Yes.
Can you tell us how that happens and then why there's uncertainty as to the funding based on the score?
That is a great question, Harold. So I'm actually going to get to the, actually I can get into that right now. So just as a reminder, so when the applications get scored, for those of you who've submitted NIH grants, you're probably familiar with the 5 key criteria that go into your overall percentile or impact score. It's going to be innovation, significance, environment, investigator, and approach. These same criteria are used to review small business grants. The key is that the reviewers are going to be looking at them from a slightly different angle. So to give you all an example, when we're looking at significance, we're not necessarily looking at, is this proposal going to be very important for advancing scientific knowledge? We're going to be looking at, is this a technology or a solution that fulfills some sort of unmet scientific or medical need? Is this something that has commercial potential? But when you get a score back, some institutes and centers, and this does vary, some of them will use a pay line to consider applications. So if you get an impact score, 10 is a perfect score, most institutes and centers are going to consider scores between 10 and 40. Sometimes, so I'll use NHLBI as an example, for phase 1 SBIR grants, we have a pay line. And that is, if you get your score between 10 and 30, you are very, very likely to be funded. And that's more certain. But a lot of institutes and centers use what's known as a zone of consideration. So your score generally has to be between 10 and 40 to be considered for funding. But that doesn't mean that the impact score is the only factor. Sometimes things like budgetary availability, programmatic balance, the prior record of the PI and the team, these will often go into account when making those funding decisions. And so one of the things that we always recommend is to reach out to your assigned program officer who's listed on that summary statement. They will often be able to give you a good outlook in terms of whether or not you should be pursuing a resubmission for your proposal or whether you have a high likelihood of being funded with your current score. And as a reminder, nothing is ever certain until that notice of award goes out, but the conversation with your PO can often be very helpful in kind of providing that way forward. So I hope, did that cover everything? All right, perfect. So in order to submit a small business grant, there are some required registrations that need to be done before you can submit. So the 4 that are required for small business grants are the System for Award Management, grants.gov, ERA Commons, and this is of course required for all NIH grant applicants, and SBIR.gov. And then if you're going to be submitting a contract, you have to submit those via the electronic contract proposal submission site. Just a reminder, some of these registrations take several weeks to process, specifically the SAM registration. So always be sure to start these processes early and don't wait till the last minute. And so for resources that are helpful for applicants, I highly recommend going to the NIH SEED website, which is seed.nih.gov. They have a lot of really fantastic resources that can help you with your application, including sample applications, an annotated form set, the SF424 applications manual, and also information about several pre-application assistance programs that can help you with putting together your submission. So as I mentioned via Harold's question, the review criteria that are used to review small business grants are going to be the same as those that are used to review research project grants. That being said, they're going to be looked at through a slightly different lens when you're doing a small business grant. And so, for example, if for significance, the reviewers are going to be looking at, does this fulfill some sort of unmet need, and is there commercial potential? For the investigators, there's more of a focus on the company's team rather than just the PI. For innovation, they're looking at, is this technology a significant improvement over its competitors? Does it offer something new that the standard of care does not? For approach, They are going to be looking to make sure that the study is feasible and that the research activities and the study overall are well designed. And then finally, for environment, they want to make sure that you have the resources and the facilities and the equipment needed to complete the proposal. And there are other factors that go into the overall impact score but are not scored individually, which are listed on the slide, and other review considerations that are not going to be factored into the overall review score. I highly recommend everybody look at the Center for Scientific Review website. This also has a list of special study sections that review small business grants. And these sections not only have scientific expertise, but they're also bringing in reviewers who have business expertise as well. So one thing I wanted to leave you all with is that sometimes when you submit a grant application, it's not going to get funded. And that's always a bummer. But I wanted to just share some testimonials from past awardees and present awardees who have had experiences where they've submitted their grant, it's not funded, but they were able to address the critiques from the reviewers and resubmit. There are so many applicants I've talked to who did not get funded the first time, but they did get funded upon resubmission. So just a reminder, don't give up. And in many cases, those reviewer critiques can be used to make your proposal even stronger. So I also wanted to just quickly go over some resources for small business applicants and grantees that are offered by the NIH. So the Applicant Assistance Program is one of those pre-application assistance programs that I referenced. So several institutes and centers participate in this program with National Cancer Institute as the lead institute. And so this provides 10 weeks of free coaching for companies that have not previously gotten a small business grant. And the purpose of the program is to walk companies through the submission process so they can put together a well-written and complete phase 1 small business grant. And it's a really great program for companies that have a great technology but minimal NIH grant submission experience. And so this is open to any company that has not previously received a small business grant, but we really encourage women-owned and led small businesses, as well as businesses led by underrepresented minority individuals or socially and economically disadvantaged individuals to apply for this program.
Question.
Yes?
What if you're in a situation where it's
Thanks, Harold. What if you're in a situation where it's like your mentor had gotten an SBIR, but now you're taking over the project and it's your first application, but the idea's already gotten a phase 1 before?
That's a great question. So technically, the requirement is that your company cannot have gotten a phase 1 grant. So let's say, for example, your mentor has gotten funded for this technology through an R01, but your company is brand new and your company has never gotten a small business grant. That would make you eligible.
Thanks.
Yep. And we have another program through our sister institute, the National Institute on Minority Health and Health Disparities. They have a program called the Health Disparities Pre-Application, or HD Pre-App program. This one is open to any small business applicant. They don't have to be a new applicant or awardee. If they are proposing some sort of technology to be used to address and reduce health disparities. So let's say, for example, you were focusing on reducing cancer health disparities, and normally your application would be assigned to NCI. I would still recommend looking into this program because the National Institute for Minority Health and Health Disparities is willing to support disease-focused technologies as long as they are addressing some sort of health disparity. A lot of people wonder if the funds being used for the NIH grants can be used to support non-R&D expenses, so things more focused on commercialization. And the answer is yes. There is a limited allowance that phase 1 and phase 2 applicants can use that are specifically focused on technical and business assistance. So if you're, like for example, if you're a phase 1 applicant, you can request up to $6,500 for expenses specifically focused on technical and business services. So for example, regulatory strategy preparation, IP expertise, developing your business plan or your manufacturing plans. These all fall under the TABA umbrella. And for phase 2 applicants, they can request up to $50,000 in their application. Some institutes and centers allow grantees to request these after the fact through an administrative supplement. And then if you didn't request these funds in your application, there are some centralized programs, the Needs Assessment and Consulting Services Program for Phase 1 and Phase 2 grantees. And these are run by the NIH Seed Office, which oversees the entire NIH Small Business Program ecosystem. And the Seed Office has a lot of resources that are valuable to grantees. So for example, they have a team of regulatory and business development consultants and entrepreneurs in residence who are able to answer questions and provide guidance to grantees. Several entrepreneurial support programs, which I'm going to be going into really quickly in the next few slides. And the Seed Office also supports companies participating in partnering and investor showcases. So they provide companies with the opportunity to essentially get comp registration to present at some of these events that might put them in contact with potential investors or strategic partners. I-Corps at the NIH is a really fantastic program that can help early stage companies with their customer discovery experiences. So this program was launched by the National Cancer Institute about almost 10 years ago, and it's highly based on the NSF I-Corps program, which I'm sure many people in this room are familiar with. But this program is a little more biotech focused compared to the NSF program, and it allows Phase 1 and early stage fast track awardees to participate for 8 weeks in the training. And at the same time that they're doing the I-Corps training, they are required to reach out to 100 potential customers, and the information that's gathered by these customer interviews will help them refine their business plan. So the next due date for I-Corps is going to be, I believe, November 15th, 2023. And typically, the National Institutes of Health will support 2 cohorts a year that are open to all institutes and centers. The C3I program is open to many institutes and centers at the NIH. If you are a medical device-focused innovator, you can apply for either the education or the validation and execution program. The education is kind of I call it the junior C3I program. This is a really great option for R01 funded investigators and non-small business grantees who maybe want more of an introduction to medical device development and entrepreneurial education. So the next due date for this one's going to be next spring. But the validation and execution program, this one's open to small business grantees and non-small business grantees alike. This provides 24 weeks of entrepreneurial training. And the deadline for this program is going to be August 18th. So different institutes that participate, some of them will allow non-small business grantees to participate, some of them don't. So if you're interested in this program, definitely check out the website and just go look under your applicable institute and center to see what types of grants they support through this program. And finally, I wanted to go over the NIH Small Business Diversity Supplement Program. So at show of hands, how many people in this room have heard of the regular Diversity Supplement Program? Okay, this is very similar to that, but it has a slightly different focus. While the regular Diversity Supplement Program is designed to support the scientific training for individuals who are early in their career so that the biomedical workforce can become more diverse, this program specifically is designed to help early career scientists get entrepreneurial training in addition to scientific training to improve the diversity of the small business supported workforce. So this program allows small business grantees to hire early career scientists, and ranging from all the way from undergraduate students all the way up to those that are developing independent research careers. And it provides salary support, usually an additional allowance for travel and supplies. And this is a great program. The NIH has supported over 93 individuals to date. I know that the institutes that are represented here today have supported many candidates through this program. And it's just a really great opportunity to give, from the company side, to give a valuable career training opportunity to early career scientists. And from the early career scientist perspective, it's a great opportunity for them to gain this additional career experience.
Question, what is the administrative burden for the awardee to apply for the diversity supplement?
That's a great question. So typically the supplement application itself is not going to take too long to put together. Most of the documents can be taken from the parent grant. There are some additional documents that are required, such as like a letter of eligibility. The candidate needs to provide their bio sketch and letters of support. And also the research strategy is going to be modified. So instead of just having a typical research strategy that you'd find in a parent grant, you're going to have a summary of the parent grant specific aims and more details about how that candidate's work is going to fit in under the parent grant aims. Additionally, we also require a mentoring plan that is going to provide details about how that candidate is going to get scientific and business training.
So it sounds like it's fairly identical to the normal diversity supplements, at least in terms of the main. I guess you got to talk about business training instead of just.
It is, and there are some other minor difference. The other minor difference that I wanted to mention about the small business diversity supplement program is that, especially for higher level candidates, such as those that are postdocs or those that are developing independent research careers, specifically for postdocs, the company does not, if they have a good justification, they don't have to adhere to the NRSA training levels. So this can be really valuable for attracting talent and offering competitive salaries to those students.
So the parent grant is at the company,
Yes.
right? So does the supplement have to go to the company? So in the sense as if it's a grad student, it's not paying their stipend at Georgia Tech. It's allowing them as a grad student to be hired part-time at the company, or how does that work? Or does it subcontract to the...
It depends on the career level. So for instance, at certain career levels, it is allowable for the candidate to be affiliated with the academic partner. So I know that for independent research scientists and postdoctoral scientists, it is allowed for the candidate to be affiliated with the university. But once again, there are different requirements at the career levels for the candidates. So the notice of funding opportunity for this program, it describes basically what affiliation the candidate has to have at each of those.
And in that case, let's say now it's going to go to the parent grant, but then be subcontracted out to the academic partner, I assume, because that's where the students are, the scientist appointment is. Is that under the restrictions of percent allocation to is that going to cost you against your 30% that can go to a partner university, because now you're sending more money through the diversity supplement to that partner? Does that question make sense? Partner, or is this sort of waived from that requirement?
Oh, so the subcontracting requirement. So typically that is not going to apply to that.
Okay, great.
Not to my knowledge.
Thank you.
So now that I've provided some overview about the NIH Small Business Program as a whole, I just wanted to briefly go over my home institute small business program. So the NHLBI Small Business Program is designed to fund innovative and commercially promising technologies that can be used to prevent, treat, and diagnose heart, lung, blood, and sleep-related diseases. With one caveat, we generally don't fund lung or blood cancers. Those go to our friends at the National Cancer Institute. So this pie chart here shows the overview of the different types of technologies that we fund through our small business program. This does tend to vary from year to year based on what submissions we get through the omnibus solicitations, but overall, about 33% of our portfolio is therapeutics. We are a fairly device-heavy institute, as you can see, but we also fund things such as research tools, in vitro diagnostics, and digital health type technologies. So in the Innovation and Commercialization Office, which houses our small business program, we support several different types of programs that provide monetary support, and these are listed in red. But we also have a team of entrepreneurs in residence and support staff who can provide non-monetary support and guidance, and those activities are listed in blue. And so basically, the summary of this slide, I wanted to have one takeaway point, and that is that we are here to help innovators all the way from the basic and early stage translational research activities all the way up until the point that their technologies are adopted by patients and providers. So in addition to receiving applications through the Omnibus Notices of Funding Opportunities, and that's where most of our applications come in from, we do have some targeted funding opportunities that I'm going to be going over shortly. So some of these are requests for applications that have set-aside funds and special review panels. Others are going to be notices of special interest that are linked to the Omnibus. And while these don't really have set-aside review or set-aside funds, I strongly recommend, if you have a NOCI that aligns with your project, to apply through the NOCI, because these indicate areas of high scientific priority for our institute. So the Phase 2B programs, I mentioned earlier that some institutes have Phase 2B competing renewal awards. The NHLBI has two programs. One is called the Bridge Program, and one is called the Small Market Program. So the purpose of both of these programs, they serve a similar mission, and that is to provide innovators that have already gotten a Phase 2 Small Business Award, who are developing technologies that fall under our mission space, with extra funds needed to meet their regulatory milestones and connect with potential investors and strategic partners. So the Bridge Program applies to virtually any technology that comes under our mission space, and the Small Market Program applies to companies that are developing technologies that address rare diseases and/or pediatric indications. So both of these programs will provide up to $3 million over 3 years. They do have different matching fund requirements, though. The Bridge awardees have to bring in a 1-to-1 match, meaning if they get a $3 million award, then they have to bring in $3 million in matching funds. The small market awardees have to bring in a 1-to-3 match, meaning if they get a $3 million award, they have to bring in $1 million in funding. And we try to fund about 5 Bridge awards and 2 small market awards every year through our set-aside budget for these RFAs. And the next receipt date is going to be February 28th, 2024. So if you already have a Phase 2 award and you think you need some additional funding to help meet your regulatory milestones and bring on some investors, these are really, really fantastic programs to help with them. I also wanted to highlight, oh yes.
Does your Phase 2 award have to be awarded by NHLBI?
It does not. In fact, it doesn't even have to be awarded through the NIH. It can be awarded through another federal agency, and it could also be awarded through a contract, not necessarily a grant. The key requirement is that the technology itself needs to fit in our mission space. So I wanted to highlight one of the RFAs that we participate in as a secondary institute. It's called the Innovations for Healthy Living Small Business RFA. This is run by the National Institute for Minority Health and Health Disparities, but the NHLBI, we put aside about $2.9 million every year to fund technologies that can help improve heart, lung, blood, and sleep health in historically underserved and health disparity populations. So some of the technologies that we're interested in funding include things like mobile applications, diagnostic devices, wearable devices, and health IT and informatics and software devices. So this is a really great opportunity if you do have a technology that can be applied to these populations for 2 reasons. We have set aside funds through this RFA, meaning that instead of competing against all of the other omnibus applicants, you're competing for a smaller bucket of money against fewer applicants. And also, all the applications are reviewed by an NIMHD-run special emphasis panel, which has expertise in both health disparities research and product development. So the next due date for this program is September 6th, 2023, so one date after the omnibus. Additionally, the NHLBI participates in the HEAL RFAs, HEAL being the Helping End Addiction Long-Term Program. And we participate in both SBIR and STTR RFAs that are focused on the development of non-addictive therapeutics and technologies for improved pain management. So we're specifically interested in research tools, therapeutics, devices that focus on acute and chronic pain management in the context of patients with heart, lung, blood, and sleep disorders. So this also has a set aside funds that come from the HEAL bucket. So you're not competing against the omnibus applications, you're competing against all of the other HEAL applicants. And the technologies are reviewed by a special emphasis review panel as well. So the due dates for these RFAs are one day before the omnibus, so September 4th. And I also wanted to give a shout out to the entrepreneurs and residents who are employed by the Innovation and Commercialization Office. In addition to the seed office having their regulatory and business development experts in-house, the NHLBI has a team of entrepreneurs and residents who have areas of expertise that they're able to assist with. And they provide a lot of really great services to our grantees, including pitch coaching them to prepare for investor showcases, providing one-on-one consults, lending their expertise to the review of different projects. And they not only help our small business grantees, but they also lend their expertise to other researchers that are funded through translational mechanisms. And before I close out my presentation, I wanted to just highlight some of the NHLBI-funded companies, two in particular that have affiliations with Georgia Tech in some way, shape, or form. So the first company I wanted to highlight is called Innovient. So Innovient was founded in Alpharetta in 2018. They are formerly known as TGen Tech. And so they are a company that focuses on developing a technology called Treatment Guard. And so this is a regenerative tissue platform for pediatric patients suffering from congenital heart disease. So this company has received both Phase 1 and Phase 2 awards from the NHLBI, as well as a Phase 1 award from the NIBIB. So this company is led by Ajay Hood, who is the co-founder and CEO. And recently, they were a part of the first cohort for the Georgia Tech Center for MedTech Excellence. They were one of 17 companies that was selected for the first cohort. So we're very proud of the Innovient team for this wonderful honor. And also, I wanted to highlight Sanguina. Sanguina is a health tech company that was founded in 2014 based on technology developed at Emory and Georgia Tech. So they are more of a digital health-focused company that has a platform called AnemoCheck. So it's a mobile app which can essentially take a picture of your fingernail, and it can be used to detect hemoglobin levels. So for individuals at risk of anemia, this can be used to kind of screen for that. So recently, they launched their premium AnemoCheck subscription. So this has even 50% more accurate results than the original AnemoCheck. And they've received small business funding from the NHLBI, both Phase 1 and Phase 2 grants. They've also received STTR funding from the NSF. And this is Erica Taberski, who is the co-founder and CEO of Sanguina. And then one other opportunity that's not under the small business umbrella that I wanted to mention is the Catalyze RFAs. So Catalyze are some funding opportunities that are not small business grants, but they are focused on product definition and development. So they're a really great option for academic innovators who maybe don't have a company yet, but they want to attract some funding to help de-risk and develop their technologies. So we have several different funding opportunities focused on different technology types. We have one focused on enabling technologies and transformative platforms for heart, lung, blood, and sleep research. We have two funding opportunities focused on the development of therapeutics. And then a third, we have two focused on the development of devices, diagnostics, research tools, and assays. So if you're interested in this program, please come see me after the presentation. These do follow different due dates than the small business program. So the next due date for all of these RFAs is July 21st. And then finally, if you want to connect with the Innovation and Commercialization Office and the Small Business Program, we've got QR codes here. One will take you to the website, and another one will sign you up for our newsletter. I definitely recommend signing up if you want to stay up to date on all of our programs and resources that we participate in. And finally, you can email us at nhlbi_SBIR@mail.nih.gov. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, Dr. Saroj Regmi, who's going to be giving you the NCI overview.
Just make a quick, thank you so much. That was great. Just a quick programmatic announcement. So this is being recorded, so we'll post it afterwards to the IBB website. And in the original schedule, we were going to have this section go to 12. But we certainly are planning to extend it so we can have more discussions. I want everybody not to freak out on the clock. Okay?
That's good.
Let me get the other mic here.
Can you guys hear me all right? Perfect. I'll try to be really fast. I am cognizant that we don't have a lot of time. But so my name is Saroj Regmi, and I'm here to talk to you about the NCI's Small Business Program. So my colleague Stephanie did a great job of highlighting all the institutes within the NIH and their own programs. And at the NCI, we have a dedicated office that is aimed at providing guidance and advice to our applicants as well as awardees. Within the NIH, the NCI's portfolio is the largest. So for the fiscal year 2023, our budget is going to be $203 million. And if you look at the pie chart here, you will see that we're interested in anything and everything that has to do with cancer. So small molecules, therapeutics, biologics, educational tools, software, bioinformatics, diagnostic tools, imaging devices. We have a pretty broad portfolio, and we're interested in all kinds of innovation that touches cancer. So in terms of the funding mechanisms, we talked a little bit about the omnibus solicitation and targeted solicitation. So the omnibus being with 3 receipt dates in January 5th, April 5th, September 5th. There are also these targeted solicitations at NCI that are NCI initiated with really specific NCI goals, and I'll quickly share them later. At the NCI, we also heavily use contract topics. So these are topics that we've selected based on NCI priority areas. So we believe these areas have a strong potential for commercialization, and there will be significant NCI oversight in these programs. There will be 1 receipt date per year, and these are really attractive mechanisms if you have a technology that aligns with one of the contract topics. For the purposes of the NCI, there's a lot of confusion regarding budget limits for SBIR and STTR. For purpose of NCI, if you have a technology that aligns with cancer, our phase 1 budget is $400,000, phase 2 budget is $2 million. And we have a list of these waiver topics that are quite comprehensive. So therapeutics, in vitro and in vivo diagnostics, imaging technologies, devices for cancer therapy, development of digital health tools, anything and everything that has to do with cancer aligns with these waiver topics, and you can request $400,000 for phase 1 and $2 million for phase 2. So I find this pie chart, this bar graph to be one of the most important takeaways for you today. So what we did at the NCI is we looked at the grant success rate for fiscal year 2021, and we compared the original submission 01 with resubmissions A1. And what we found out is that the first time application success rate is around 7%. Resubmission was around 20% for fiscal year 2021. And if you combine the two, the success rate hovered around 10%. So what that tells you is that there's a lot of benefits to talking to program officers. Even after you've submitted, there's a lot of benefit to resubmitting your application, because you may not be successful the first time, but your odds are in your favor when you resubmit. With that, I'll move on to some of the funding opportunities that are available through the NCI. So as I said, the omnibus solicitation is important, and I'll quickly touch upon some really important funding opportunities that are very specific to NCI and might be of interest to you. So I mentioned the contract topics. So these are the 11 contract topics for fiscal year 2024. We have set aside some money for them. So if you are working on any of these technologies, be sure to check them out and be sure to think about applying for a contract topic. So anything between flash radiation detectors all the way to microbiome-based tests for cancer research. So they're pretty comprehensive, and these will be offered for fiscal year 2024 and may not be offered again in the future. So definitely think about these as well. So the other interesting award that I'd like to talk to you about and spend some time here is the Small Business Transition Grant. So if you're one of those aficionados really familiar with the K99 R00 mechanism, which creates a path for an academic investigator. So you get initial funding for your postdoc with the K99, and then you can transition with the R00 mechanism. We wanted to create a similar sort of mechanism for entrepreneurship. So if you have a master's degree within your 10 years, if you're a PhD student that's about to graduate, and if you're a postdoc within 10 years of your PhD, this grant may be a really right fit for you. So the goal here is to provide that initial funding while you're at the university, and then also allow you to transition. So utilizing this K99 R00-like mechanism. And this is how it works. So this is pretty novel in that the phase 1 is an STTR because it allows for greater flexibility for folks that are affiliated with the university. So the trainee will be either a postdoc or a graduating PhD student or a master's student who is within 10 years of their terminal degree. They're required to furnish a mentoring plan. They're required to have 2 mentors. One of them will be a technical mentor who's their supervisor, a research supervisor. The other person will be their business mentor who's able to provide them business guidance and expertise. So the goal here is the PI is prepping the technology to move to a small business, and that's the transition. So in that phase 1, as Stephanie talked about earlier, we also pay for these guys to participate in the I-Corp program as well. So the transition happens when the PI moved to small business concern. So now they're primarily employed by the small business concern, given that in a phase 2 it's an SBIR. The same training will continue. They'll work on the same project. There might be small pivots that are allowed if with I-Corp they recognize that there might be alternative things to be thinking about. The next receipt date is August 21, 2023. And if you're interested, we will be sharing all of these slides with all these links. So be sure to check this out if this is of interest. Go ahead.
Is it just for cancer, or is it a broad program?
That's a great point. I thought I had another slide here. There are 4 institutes that are participating in this funding opportunity announcement. The Cancer Institute, NIDA, drug abuse, the biomedical imaging, NIBIB, as well as genome research, so NHGRI. So these are the 4 institutes that are participating in this particular funding opportunity announcement.
Got some online questions.
Sure.
Could you explain more about the fast track versus phase 1, phase 2? Which one is more feasible for early stage life science founders? And they said in brackets, more feasible, less difficult.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's really hard. It really depends on where you are in your technology. So a lot of the time, phase 1 might be the first route for you to think about SBIR, STTRs. If you've done that initial prototype development work, if you've already done some work, then you may be appropriate for a phase 2. And as Stephanie mentioned earlier, if you want both of them in one, if you want a really competitive grant mechanism with really clearly laid out milestones that you'll meet at the end of your phase 1, then a fast track might be appropriate. What is great is you can always come talk to us. We're really happy to figure out what might be the best opportunity. So that that might be the way to go.
And last one that I see is, when is there going to be an opening for new solicitations for Omnibus?
So it's coming out in a couple of weeks. But there was a notice that was presented that said that the September dates will still apply. So the new Omnibus solicitation will come out soon.
Can you provide a little bit more specific details about the requirements for a soon-to-be graduating PhD student? Like, they can be a PhD student when they apply, but by the time phase 1 starts,
right.
They need to be a postdoc. Is that
That's right. Yeah, we're anticipating that they graduate so that they can finish their PhD and then transition.
And so this is the typical 9-month cycle. So the idea is if your defense is within 9 months, then
That's right.
Okay.
Perfect. At the NCI, we've also created what is called a concept award. So if you have an innovation slightly before a traditional phase 1 SBIR, STTR, and if you're working on rare and pediatric cancer, we've created a really short application process for you with a special review criteria that focuses on innovation. I believe 40% of the scoring happens on innovation. So we're really focusing on out-of-the-box technologies, working on rare and pediatric cancer. If that's and interest. The full proposal is due August 22nd, and this is a contract topic. The solicitation is open, and I've highlighted the link here as well. I don't want to spend too much time with the Bridge Award. This is very similar to what Stephanie had talked about with the NHLBI's program. So this provides $4 million in additional funding if you have a phase 2 with any SBIR program across the federal government, and if you're working on cancer-specific innovation, you should consider applying for this. We do require 1-to-1 matching at least, so you need to think about getting that matching funds as well. And so this is for doing technology validation and clinical translation work. The next receipt date is August 22nd, 2023. At the NCI, there are a lot of different resources that are available, some to our applicants and some to our awardees. We have what is called a peer learning and networking webinar. Be sure to check it out. It's available online. I will provide the links. There will be various topics that we cover on a regular basis that might help you as you're thinking about forming your business, as well as applying to the SBIR program. We also participate in the application assistance program. Once you're an awardee, there are a lot of different resources, such as the I-Corps program that Stephanie talked about. We also have a really strong investor initiatives program. We have a wide network of investors as well as pharma partners that are interested in NCI-funded technologies, and we regularly interact with them. There are also different resources that are available to you, which I don't have the time to go on today, but be sure to check them out. So I already talked about the planned webinar. We did one on how to write a good specific aims page, how to implement the quality management system, how to start a small business. We also have a care program to help with regulatory expertise within the FDA. So we interact with FDA and provide guidance for our awardees. Women Innovator Network, and I already talked about the Investor Initiatives program. I will finally end with saying that definitely reach out to us. We're really happy to talk to you as you're thinking about submitting your application. We're happy to talk to you after you've submitted. Consider us your resource, and definitely reach out if you have any questions. We also have a events page, and we also have a monthly office hour, and also definitely learn more about our funding opportunities by signing up to our mailing list. Thank you. Josh is next.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm here representing the National Institute on Aging, accelerating Alzheimer's and aging research. Happy to talk about some of the unique programs at NIA compared to the other institutes that are here and that are run SBIR programs. So NIA is now the third largest institute at NIH. We have a budget of around $150 million for fiscal year 2023 for small business innovation. And as you can see here, NIA has been one of the fastest growing institutes in at least recent NIH history, going from one of the smaller institutes about 7 years ago to now the third largest. I think this really is reflective of kind of the understanding of the aging US population and the congressional mandate to provide technologies to address this population. Oh, sorry for the formatting issue. But the NIA is interested in kind of a broad variety of technologies that will improve the quality of life for older adults. By far, one of our largest focus areas is our Alzheimer's disease and related dementias, which I'll go into more detail in a second. But we are interested in kind of age-related diseases more broadly, aging-in-place solutions, and research tools to conduct aging research. Unlike a lot of the other institutes that have kind of a very clear disease or set of diseases in the name, aging can be a little fuzzy on where we fund versus our other institutes. As the other colleagues pointed out, we encourage you to reach out to a program officer early to really find out if your project is a good fit for NIA as opposed to other institutes. And you can see here, like all the other institutes, we are more or less technology agnostic. This is a reflection of our current funding, not necessarily funding priorities, but you can see about 30% of our portfolio is on kind of therapeutics. But one of the fastest growing pieces of our portfolio have been the digital health and mobile health. So technologies to help coordinate care, to look at digital biomarkers for dementia, and technologies in that space. Again, I mentioned that about 2/3 of our budget goes towards Alzheimer's disease. So just to really emphasize the kind of scope and severity of Alzheimer's disease, it's estimated that in 2020, it cost the nation around $321 billion. This will go up to around $1 trillion by 2050. It's currently the 7th leading cause of death in the United States, and it's estimated that 1 in 3 older adults will have dementia by the time that they pass away. One other piece that I'd like to just point out, and I think this really speaks to all the institutes, but definitely at NIA, we're very cognizant of the ways that health disparities impacts health in older adult. And you can see in Alzheimer's as an example, 1 in 5 women will develop Alzheimer's as opposed to 1 in 10 men. Older Black Americans are about twice as likely as white Americans to develop Alzheimer's in I think 65 plus population. And older Hispanics are about 1.5 times more likely. So we definitely see how in old age, we see this kind of culmination of health disparities over the lifetime, and we are interested in technologies to address the unique needs of older adults based off gender, race, rural versus urban solutions, and those sorts of things. That's kind of a recap of, I think, what you've heard a few times now. For NIA specifically, our budget is $300,000 to $500,000, depending on the exact technology. So $300,000 for what we consider general aging, $500,000 for phase 1 awards that are impacting Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. For phase 2, it's $2 million for phase 2 for general aging, $2.5 million for technologies that are impacting Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. And then we are signed on to the vast majority of other programs and awards that are broadly across NIH, the Fast Track, Direct to Phase 2, Phase 2B as a bit of a bridge, 3 years up to $3 million, so about $1 million per year if you have that Phase 2 award already. And then we're also signed on to the Commercialization Readiness Pilot. Just to spend a little bit more time on the CRP, we allow for submissions up to $3.4 million. We recognize that it takes more than just the R&D for a business to be successful. So what's nice about the Commercialization Readiness Pilot is in addition to funding that R&D project, you can use some of those funds to support technical assistance. So whether that be kind of manufacturing plans, consultants and getting IP consultations and all those kind of types of things unrelated to the R&D necessary to get that technology to the market. So NIA does have a handful of contracts, but it's not primarily we use the kind of investigator-initiated grant opportunities for funding projects and technologies. We are signed on to the Omnibus in addition to some targeted solicitations. Again, we kind of think of our omnibus solicitation as our general aging portfolio. So if you have something that impacts aging that's not related to Alzheimer's disease or related dementias, you would apply through the omnibus solicitation. If it does impact ADRD, then we have a targeted solicitation with slightly increased budget limits and some more flexibility on timelines and things like that. Our one nosy that I wanted to bring up, or notice of special interest, is in technologies addressing senescence. So for detection, characterization, and monitoring of senescence-related changes. I know that's getting a lot of research focus right now, and we definitely recognize that, and we are interested in those technologies. Otherwise, we are signed on to the vast majority of programs that are cut across the NIH, applicant assistance program, diversity supplements, so on and so forth. We have sample applications online that are available as you're putting together your application that we've spent a lot of time on. Actually, Stephanie helped create a lot of these sample applications. They're really great resources for applicants. I wanted to talk about 2 unique NIA programs that are available for kind of early stage founders, the READY program and the Startup Challenge. So NIA Research and Entrepreneurial Development Immersion. This is to support early stage researchers, generally kind of at the postdoc up to junior faculty, kind of pre-tenure. It's a series of different awards, and I'll get into them in a little bit more detail, but it's helped to bridge that transition as they move from kind of basic research or from kind of academic research into more entrepreneurial focused research and developing non-academic scientific careers. I tell applicants that this graph is kind of a bit of a grab bag, so you can focus on one aspect of, or one skill associated with one of these, multiple of these, kind of whatever is the best fit for your career goals. So whether that be by entrepreneurship, science communication and policy, consulting, regulatory affairs, so on and so forth. So those awards that are associated with the READY program is the READY SBIR and STTR. To keep it brief, they're structured very similar to the transition award that NCI, or that Saroj described at NCI. There are a few key differences. Our eligibility is within 10 years of your PhD. You don't have to be a postdoc. You could be outside of academia, but as long as you're within 10 years of that PhD, you're eligible, and you must be a first-time PI on an R equivalent or an SBIR grant. You can see right now those application receipt dates are old. We definitely want to offer it again. No details on timeline right now, but we do hope to make that available again.
Can you repeat that requirement? You have to be the applicant on the SBIR?
So a first-time PI on an SBIR grant or an R01 level grant. So again, so I think you asked a question before, if you're a professor, what'd you say?
You already have one?
No, so a brand new application, so this is a brand new SBIR, you just have never been the PI on an SBIR grant previously. Yeah. In addition to this READY SBIR and READY STTR, we also have a READY R25 award. So this is for institutes that want to put on novel entrepreneurial coursework so that they can help prepare grad students and postdocs to learn more about those skills that I talked about earlier. It can focus purely on entrepreneurship. We can add in science communication or science policy pieces as well. It can be a summer program. It can go across the year. We're really open to novel programs just to better educate students on the vast variety of careers that they may go into postgraduate school and potentially outside of academia. And then finally, there's the READY K01. This is specifically for postdocs and junior faculty. We kind of think of this as a postdoc that is interested in entrepreneurship but still wants to maintain doing research as a postdoc in aging-related research. It provides $90,000 in salary, $50,000 in program-related expenses. We've had awardees use this money to attend different workshops, to get certifications, to go to conferences, to possibly do like a shadowing opportunity at a small business over the summer. So kind of learn more about the world outside of academia while they're still doing their academic research. And those opportunities are due October 18th of this year. So still a lot of time to put together an application. And then finally, I wanted to talk about, oh yeah. I can repeat the question.
Thanks.
For this K01 is, so it's for eligibility as postdoc. Do you do the same thing here where you could apply as a PhD student, and as long as you're a postdoc at the time of the award initiation, you're eligible, or?
So for this, you need to be a current postdoc going into your second year by the time of the award. For the K01 specifically. For the READY SBIR and READY STTR, you can, as long as you have your PhD by the time the award starts, you would be eligible for the READY SBIR and READY STTR. This is a really unique program that NIA has been spearheading. We're now ramping up for our second year, so we've had one cohort. It's the NIA Startup Challenge and Accelerator. We realized that NIH and really the kind of broader world of bioentrepreneurship has not done a good job funding and preparing entrepreneurs from diverse backgrounds. I think women make up around 2% of venture capital fund and make up a kind of an underrepresented amount of NIH SBIR funding as well. So we developed this program to foster diversity in aging research and innovation and to ultimately help prepare these individuals to be more competitive for both SBIR and STTR awards as well as funding opportunities even outside of the SBIR world. Yes?
Given that women make up 2%, are there discussions at the NIH of allowing women to be eligible for diversity supplements?
I cannot speak to that.
Because right now they're not, right? It's the standard.
I'll actually answer that. So the SBIR, STTR specific diversity supplement.
Wait. We have like 20 people.
Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. The SBIR, STTR specific diversity supplement also expands eligibility to women and social and economically disadvantaged candidates. So technically, the candidate, we can't bar a certain candidate from applying, like that's not allowed. But what we are looking for is for any application, we want to know how specifically hiring this candidate is going to improve the diversity of the small business program. Recognizing that women at the C-level are, it's not very common in the medical device and biotech industries, and also same thing for socially and economically disadvantaged people.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I say, in general, NIH isn't in the business of trying to tell you for sure if you're diverse or not. We will rely on you to kind of explain how you are bringing diversity to these programs, and that definitely goes for this program. And so this is a prize competition, so it's not using the SBIR STTR mechanism. This gives us a little bit more flexibility in the program structure and in the scope of this program. Again, we're looking for early stage founders, so as part of the application process, you have to be able to describe the need for this kind of program. So if you've already been through a lot of accelerator programs and if you already have some early stage funding, this program probably wouldn't be the best fit for you. So you have to kind of have a demonstrated need for the programs that we'll provide in this challenge. And again, ultimately, we're trying to get you ready to put together a competitive SBIR grant. So this is kind of a quick snapshot. Don't have time to go into the entirety of the program, but it's spread out over about 5 months from July to December. For those 5 months, we have this in-depth entrepreneurial training. We go through how to put together an SBIR grant, how to do customer discovery, how to put together a pitch deck, evaluate your budget, and put together your pro formas. We'll fly you to a conference, an investor conference, to really see what that world is like firsthand and to give you an opportunity to present some of your technology at that conference if you're ready. And another key aspect of this program that we spend a lot of time on is matching each participant with a primary mentor that has a shared background, both technology background and kind of demographic background, as to the extent that we can, to really help those participants tap into those more experienced networks and learn about the shortcomings of technology, what's that space actually like, what's their competition, so on and so forth. At the end, we give a cash prize of $60,000 to, last year it was 5 companies, this year it'll be 6 companies, based off kind of a final pitch competition that we do with those participants. You can see this is last year's cohort. We're working on really a very diverse topics related to aging-related research, from really diverse backgrounds and with solutions to address health disparities and dementias and different types of populations. This is just the 5 winners from last year, everything from kind of therapeutics for menopause to home modifications and streamlining the home modification process, licensing for nursing, drug development platforms, and apps for hypertension management. So really kind of a wide range of technologies. And we're hoping that this next cohort will be just as diverse, just as ambitious, and hoping that this will be a program that we can offer roughly annually at the NIA. And again, so these are just 2 examples of the many different programs we have at NIA. Happy to answer questions. And again, just to emphasize, please reach out to a program officer if you're thinking about putting together an application. Reach out early. Reach out if you don't get the award. We're here to help. So, and with that, I think I'll turn things over to Nida.
I know I'm the last thing standing between all of you and lunch, so I will try to speak quickly. I am going to talk to you about 2 different programs today. If I can get this to, there we go. So the National Institute on Drug Abuse, as you all probably know, the drug addiction crisis is increasing, unfortunately, in this country. About 20 million people in the US suffer from addiction. About 1 in 7 are expected to develop substance use disorders at some point in their lives. Up to 50% of the people in the United States either are or know someone who has suffered from or is currently suffering from a substance use disorder. I'll use the term SUD moving forward. And about 23 million Americans are currently in recovery, proving that a person can be treated and recover from this illness. About 90% of Americans with an SUD began using substances before the age of 18, and research suggests that there may be a genetic component that accounts for a person's likelihood to develop SUD in their lifetime. And only about 10% of people with SUD are currently receiving any type of specialty treatment. So illicit drug use is increasing in the United States. You can see a map here just showing some of the percentages. Should be another one. There we go. Unfortunately, the overdose deaths have increased. You may or may not know that within the last couple of years, we've peaked over 100,000 deaths annually for the last couple of years. And this is obviously a concern. This is something that NIDA is very interested in trying to solve. And in addition to the illicit drug issues that exist in this country, we're also looking at non-illicit drugs, such as the recent increase in nicotine vaping that has really increased significantly in the last couple of years, especially among the teenager and adolescent and young adult populations. So NIDA is, we like to say that we're small but mighty. We have just a little bit, a little chunk of the overall NIH budget, but we do try to do the best work that we can with what we have. Our mission is to advance the science on drug use and addiction and to apply that knowledge to improve individual and public health. And we fund all aspects of drug use and addiction from basic science through late-stage clinical trials. So this includes biological mechanisms, neuroscience, behavior, epidemiology, services, prevention, and development of diagnostic and therapeutics. We are product agnostic, so if you have a pharmacotherapeutic, if you have a device, if you have a digital therapeutic, anything in this realm is something that we're interested in. So as I mentioned, looking at pharmaceuticals, biologics, medical devices, consumer products, assessment tools, prevention and services, and patient and caregiver support options, as well as also products that are pivoted from different conditions. So we see a lot of people that are working in, for example, like the mental health space, and they can pivot their products into something that may be useful for the SUD populations. These are some of our funding opportunities. I'm not going to highlight any specifically. You can see on the screen what's here. We do participate in the omnibus, like all the ICs do. We also have our regulated therapeutic and diagnostic solutions for opioid and stimulant use disorders. Our newest RFA is the field deployable low-cost point-of-need approaches and technologies, because there's a real problem with meeting patients where they are, especially if they're in a rural setting or if they're in a place where they can't easily access a clinic on a regular basis. We also have our Blueprint Neurotherapeutics and Blueprint MedTech program, which I'll talk about a little bit later, as well as our Start a Startup Challenge, which I have some additional information on another slide. So our Start a Startup Challenge, we run this annually. The challenge goal is to support research ideas that further an understanding of SUD and intended to be the foundation for the development of new and successful startups. So this is a $100,000 purse, up to $10,000 per team. It's open for about 6 months. It requires a 4-page idea essay and a 5-minute YouTube video from your team. We aim to fund up to 10 ideas per year, given the availability of funds. And you can see here that the technology types that we've seen have been pretty broad. We have health IT, therapeutics, devices, diagnostics, and other therapeutic and medical areas. Technologies developed through this program range from research tools to health IT products, from both academia and private companies. So we really are looking for anybody that's interested in helping this population to submit and try to get funding. We've seen teams from academia that spans across 25 different universities. Broad range here. Unfortunately, Georgia Tech is not listed here. So if you have any ideas, please apply, and we are happy to help. And we are here to help you identify which opportunity is right for you. So you can see on the left-hand side, you got the academic, and on the right-hand side, you got the business, and then there's some stuff that falls in between. You've all heard from our previous POs about the difference between SBIR and STTR, so I'm not going to rehash that. But these are the various opportunities that are available from our office to help you. And we absolutely are interested in speaking to you. I know that the other 3 people have said this previously. Please talk to us. Please email us. Please call us. We are here to help. That is our job. Looking at this slide, there are a lot of different opportunities here, and we are here to help you figure out which opportunity is best for your stage and where you are in development. And finally, I want to highlight our Growing Great Ideas Center. So NIDA funds 3 entrepreneurship-specific centers, one at Babson, one at Hopkins, and one at MIT. And these centers are specifically developed in order to help people with new ideas for substance use disorder products to get the entrepreneurship training. And so, the grant funding from the SBIR and STTR can help you do the technical work of getting your product developed and tested and out into the market. These centers are really here to help people learn the business side of things. And so these are fully funded. You apply to the different opportunities, and they range throughout the year. I think the next due date is for Johns Hopkins, which is coming up it's tomorrow. And then MIT's due date is September 1st. And so these programs are available for anybody. It's fully paid. All the tuition is paid. I think you might have to pay for your flight out there, but tuition and boarding at the site is paid, and you go for 4 or 5, depending on the program, full days with, I think, up to 25 other entrepreneurs, and you just get a real deep dive, 4 or 5 days straight of, the business schools teaching you how to run a business. This is our team. As I said, please feel free to contact us. I think my email address. So yes, my email address is here, as well as our NIDA SBIR program. That my mailbox is monitored. So if you have any questions at all, just email us and we will get back to you within 24 hours, business hours, not on a Sunday, but definitely email us. Now, I'm going to totally switch gears. So NIDA is one of my hats, but I also work for the Blueprint MedTech program. I'm one of the core team members there. The Blueprint MedTech program is a trans NIH initiative. It's an incubator that aims to accelerate the development of cutting-edge medical devices to diagnose and treat disorders of the nervous system. So as you can see on the right-hand side here, you're probably all familiar or should be familiar with what we call the Valley of Death, where there's a gap between what the traditional R01 type funding can cover and then actually getting forward to an actual commercialized product that can be sold and used in the clinic. So the purpose of this Blueprint MedTech program is to catalyze the translation of these technologies and to accelerate patient access to groundbreaking, safe, and effective medical devices. This program will provide support to sufficiently develop and de-risk technologies to the point where additional investments are warranted from either industry partners, investors, and government. So we have a holistic approach. We can support anything under this. I don't think there's a thing here. Oh, there we go. We can support anything under this umbrella, looking at market requirements, project requirements, design specifications, all the way through to critical design reviews, animal testing, and early stage clinical testing. Blueprint MedTech provides funding. Again, as with the SBIR and STTR programs, it's non-dilutive. We don't take your IP. We don't have any stake in your company. It's all non-dilutive. But the main part that is special about Blueprint is that we provide additional free resources. And so the criteria for entry are that it has to be a novel medical device technology. It can also pivot and refine existing technologies toward a new intended use. And we're looking at primarily de novo and PMA level devices, with some consideration for 510Ks based on case-by-case basis. So the reason why this program is special is because all of these resources you see on the bottom here are provided free of charge to the applicant. And so what that means is when you submit a budget as part of your SBIR grant, let's say you're submitting a phase 2 and you're looking at $2.5 million, you do not have to include clinical studies and biocompatibility and regulatory support. All of these things are provided in addition to your budget by us, by NIH, for free. That is the main wonder about this program. So just looking at the left side here, I'm going to talk a little bit about our early stage and seedling development. So we have 2 incubator hubs. One is the Neurotech Harbor and one is Cinta. You can see the award numbers here if you want to look those up. The hubs are funded by NIH to provide direct funding to innovator teams. And so essentially you would apply to these hubs at this website here. And these are, because it's earlier stage and it's essentially meant to help de-risk groundbreaking technologies, this isn't a full NIH grant proposal. This is a 4-page pre-proposal, and then all the pre-proposals get reviewed. And a subset of those are selected for a full proposal, which is about 10 pages, give or take. And then those go into a deep dive, essentially, where the team really takes a hard look at what the team is doing and how they're doing it. And from there, selections are made for people to be supported either through the seedling program or through our deep dive process. The next application cycle will open in July, close in August 2023. And by the conclusion of the hub funding, it's anticipated that all projects will be ready for entry into our Blueprint MedTech translator solicitations, which I'll talk about on the next slide. So let's say you've already got this early stage development done, you've already got a proof of concept, you're ready to go for the full grant submission. We have 2 funding opportunities. One is specific to small businesses, that is the U44, and we also have a UG3, UH3, which is a combination phase 1, phase 2, and can be either academic or small business. We do also have a notice of shared interest with the BRAIN Initiative, as well as a notice of shared interest with the HEAL Initiative. And it's reviewed by our NSDC panel. Highly recommend you look up these 2 funding numbers, or funding opportunity numbers, and look up the specifics. It's a pretty lengthy application because we are giving you a lot of money and a lot of free resources. So it's detailed, but it's needed. These are all the participating centers that take part in the MedTech program. I don't expect you to know or keep track of any of these people, but if you see anything here, NICHD, NCCIH, NEI, et cetera, these are all the centers that participate in this program. But again, this is our team. Email us. If you have any interest in this program at all in any way, shape, or form, email us. That mailbox is monitored by myself and everybody on this team. We will get back to you. We will answer your questions. We can direct you to either the hubs or the translator grants. Make sure that you are a good fit for the program. Please, 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 please email us. That's why we're here. Connect with the seat office, and we're done.
We want to take questions, right?
Yeah, are there any questions from the audience online or here?
Any questions from the virtual world?
I had a question about, I think it was R25. So I think you mentioned that there was one that we couldn't apply for because if we were still in graduate school, we'd have to graduate first to become a postdoc. But I think there was one more. I think it was R something. I don't remember what it was. But could we apply even though we're still in graduate school?
I think you may be talking about the Ready SBIR. So the Ready SBIR STTR, you can apply as a graduate student as long as you anticipate receiving your award or receiving your degree before the award receipt date. And we have on the notice of funding opportunity when we would believe the award would start so that you can line that up appropriately.
Sorry, so those two were mentioned, but then there are two more at the bottom. I don't remember. It was the third one.
Sorry, the R25 is an institutional award, so generally an institute, it could be a university, an accelerator, they would apply for that to put on an educational program tailored to graduate students or postdocs.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
So the Blueprint MedTech program is really interesting to me. So let's say I've got a technology that's developed in my laboratory. I didn't see a lot of numbers associated, like the dollar value, but I see the free resources. So I know someone's paying for that. Can you describe, how do you apply? What does that look like? Because if you've got the design history file, laboratories all set up, am I just feeding you, here's what I think the process is going to look like, and then you're going to provide me with consultants and resources and teams to execute on the commercialization process?
Essentially, yes. So the reason why the numbers are not on that slide is because each institute has to pick up a project. One of those institutes that are participating, each institute has to pick up a project, and their funding amounts vary by institute. So if I put all the numbers up there, there would be 11 different sets of numbers, and nobody's going to read that. So that's why we always recommend talking to the program officer, because then I can connect you with whoever, NIA or NIMH, whatever institute you need to talk to, and then we can collectively figure out the best plan to move forward. So those resources that I talked about, the free resources, are paid for by NIH. They're paid for by the institute that picks up your grant. And as long as you're willing to use the resources that we provide, it's free. If you need an animal study that costs $100,000, yes, we will pay for it.
Okay, so then you're basically funding the warm bodies, the human factor, and then providing resources for the execution that I can't do at my university.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
So if you have a technology that can apply to multiple areas in the NIH, can you apply to multiple areas, or do you just have to specify one that you think it applies most to?
Are you talking specifically about MedTech or about NIH in general?
MedTech, like let's say if you have a MedTech device and you want to apply for NIH SBIR funding and you want to apply to a certain, like let's say if you're applying to, the Cancer Institute, but you also have a technology that applies to other institutes, like it has multiple applications, do you just specify that one place, or does it just go out to multiple branches and then whoever funds it? How does that work?
In general, if you have a technology that can apply to multiple patient populations, you can have separate grants at the same time. Like if you're looking at 2 different conditions but using the same technology, you can have multiple grants for each of those conditions, but you can't overlap. So if you have 2 applications for the same technology in the same population at the same time, that's not allowed.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, just building off that, just so that everyone understands, like if you have a drug that might impact Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's, which NINDS funds, you would want to write 2 separate SBIR projects, one on Alzheimer's disease, one on Parkinson's. You don't want to submit one grant talking about both. Because of the way NIH is structured, NIH doesn't really have a great way of working with that kind of application because it cuts across institutes. And that's one of the things when you reach out to a program officer, we can help guide you with.
It's similar to when you're thinking about publication unit. Here you want to think about a project unit as you're thinking about applying to the NIH.
And one other point to mention is that in many cases, if you have a project that kind of is between or over, like in an overlapping mission space between institutes and centers, because this does happen a lot, that's where the dual institute assignment comes in. So if you apply through the omnibus, this is pretty common. And then what that essentially means is that if your application scores well, it goes to both institutes' council rounds, and then you could, in theory, be eligible for funding from both of those institutes.
Hi, so my question is building off of what you said. So let's say if someone has a platform technology, something maybe like mRNA or like CRISPR-based or whatever, obviously that could be applied to multiple disease models in multiple institutes. So should they also be writing separate SBIRs and apply like to different institutes, or is there any option to like a multi-institutional?
So that's going to depend on the application itself. So a lot of like the more disease agnostic institutes, like for example, NIBIB, Human Genome Research Institute, NCATS, they will sometimes fund the development of technologies outside of a disease specific context. And then later on, it's very possible for that company to apply for multiple like direct phase 2s or fast tracks at the disease focused institutes once that technology is starting to be applied to a disease specific population. Thank you.
Thanks so much for coming. This comment/question is probably above all our pay grades, but it's always surprised me that the mechanism of the review process for SBIR is the same as R01s and whatever, this 9-month time frame. 9 months in the context of a startup is an eternity. Has there ever been conversations at the NIH of, if we really want to move the needle, let's create a special review process that speeds this up like threefold? Is that ever, because SBIRs have been around since I've been in grad school, which was unfortunately a long time ago, and this has always been the case.
Yeah, I think that there have been conversations, and I don't want to go too much into that, but what I will say is, with, for example, the concept award, when we created that, that was one of the goals, is that the time to award would be 6 months or less. So if we do things in-house, there might be possibilities, but even then, just because of the way the program is set up, we have to have peer review done. We have to, we have to work with councils. It adds up the time, and also it doesn't help that we don't know what our end of the year budget is going to be until much later. So, we also have to think about that consideration too.
Brandon just called the program, the NIH director, and complained. I'm sure he replies so that he...
We've got one online program that it says, I was told you need to be a university spinoff to be eligible for the I-Core program. I think that's in reference to NSF because it's not true here. And universities may claim rights on your IP if you submit it with faculty, which they do. Yeah. So this is for the this is NSF. All right, my company's not a spinoff. Can you elaborate on my eligibility for I-Core? So I'm going to refashion that question. If it's a company that is not a university spinoff, which is what he's asking about, he or she's asking about, and they apply and are awarded an SBIR,
Yeah, any phase one awardee is eligible for the I-Core program, but they have to be in.
NIH I-Core program,
Yep.
regardless of the source of that IP, as long as it's theirs.
That's right.
Okay.
They can also apply for if they are an early stage fast track awardee in the first phase. They can also be eligible for I-Core.
I think we've got to stop now because there is food, and then at 1 p.m. these our NSF guests have to begin their office hour meetings with many of you here in the audience. So I want to thank everyone for attending and thank our guests from the NIH, and we'll see you outside for food and networking.